It is like another species we're dealing with. They don't have empathy. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about not giving a shit. It's a very, very different animal compared to most people, who are worried about, did I hurt that person? They, you're not even a person to these people. You're like a toaster.
It is so fascinating, and I can't wait to watch this documentary because I've been stuck in this sort of, empath, narcissist, haunted spiral quite a few
Yeah,
times in my life.
yeah, yes,
And I don't know how you can get caught up in it again, but you can, folks.
yes.
Like, it's just crazy. And now I'm super hyper vigilant about any red flags.
I think it's the caring, the beautiful thing is that we care, right? It's such a blessing and such a curse because I think we misidentify. And I think there's a kind of delusion where we think, well, I care, so everybody cares. No,
No.
you inside your little biological system, you care. You don't know if the other people care.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Yasmine Mohammed podcast. Today, my guest is a very special man. His name is Mark Vicente. I'm sure you know him. He's a NXIVM cult whistleblower and survivor, an author, a speaker, and an award-winning writer, director, and producer from Johannesburg, South Africa. Because of the atrocities in his native South Africa, he found himself propelled to question certain fundamental assumptions at a very young age. Mark has developed a keen and passionate interest in exposing the coercive and duplicitous environments of high control groups. He is currently in post-production on Empathy Not Included, The Narcissist's Playbook, a feature-length documentary exposing one of the most pervasive and often misunderstood mental pathologies in our culture, narcissism. I'm really looking forward to watching that documentary when it comes out, Mark. And I'm really,
Awesome.
really excited about this conversation with you today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really, really thrilled to chat with you. By the way, I've been fanboying about you for a while. Because
Aw.
I've been watching your stuff in horror, of course, but I've been watching your
Yeah,
stuff as well.
I appreciate that because I cannot tell you how many, I don't know if you found them as much as I did, but there's so many intersectionalities between your life and my life. Like I found so
Yeah.
many parts watching your HBO documentary where I was just like, oh my God, I relate to this man so much. I mean, no disrespect to any of the other NXIVM cult survivors, but people that were actors and wanted to be famous and stuff like I didn't connect with them. But with
Mm.
you, I could tell that you were into this because of your, how can we say this? Your
You know,
survivor's
my
guilt, your
my
empathy,
yeah,
of what you
I
went
felt
through under apartheid. Yeah, and
I
then you
felt
just feel like you
really
want to
shitty
give
about stuff and
back.
I wanted to fix it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And that was
Yeah.
that's where I'm like, I totally understood that. But anyway, we're
Yeah.
going to get into it because people don't know what we're talking about right now. So we're going to take it back. We're going to take it way back, actually. I want to take you back to your childhood growing up in South Africa under apartheid. When
Yeah.
when I was in Cape Town during the pandemic years, it was lovely. It was beautiful because everything is, it's Cape Town. How could it not be
Yeah.
gorgeous?
Yeah.
And I went on a safari and, everything was wonderful. And I had conversations with both Black and white people who had lived under apartheid in South Africa or who were living in South Africa under apartheid. And I found every conversation to be fascinating. Like everything
Mm.
was beyond what we normally heard, what reached Canada and America, right? So there was
Yeah.
so much more nuance to it. And I just wanted to hear about your perspectives, your experiences. Tell me about growing up during that time.
Yeah. So I mean, I grew up in Johannesburg. My grandfather he was a very devout religious man, and weirdly enough, later I found out that he was also friends with, I forget the prime minister's name, but the architect of apartheid. Like they were friends, which I thought was very weird. And I only found that out later because my mom told me. In fact, my grandfather was trying to convince him to be far more moderate than he was, and trying to get him to understand the equality of things. But I didn't know any of that as a kid. What happened as a kid is at some point, I may have been 4 or 5. I began to recognize like the tremendous disparity in the country. And I couldn't understand, like, well, why were black people less than? Why were they not equal, as equal to white people? And I had this really interesting conversation with the guy who used to do our garden, which now I'm taking you back to like the late 60s, early 70s, but like he was called the garden boy. This guy was not a boy. This guy was like 50. And I didn't think anything of that as a kid, but I remember saying to him one day, like, well, why don't you come to church? And he goes, well, I'd like to come to church, but I'm not allowed to come to church. And then I went to my grandfather and I said, why aren't they allowed to come to church? And he says, they are allowed to come to church. And I went back to the garden boy and I said, but he says, you're allowed. He says, I'm not allowed. In my mind, I was like, okay, I think my grandfather lied. And this began this like obsession to understand what is going on. Something isn't right. And I remember seeing I may have been 6 or 7, but seeing a young child killed who was a black child. And the way the adults were, they didn't seem to care. It was like a dog had been run over. She'd been hit by a car. And it was blood everywhere. It was really terrible. And I was just mortified. I just felt so horrible. But nobody seemed to really care that much. And I was like thinking something's dreadfully wrong. Thank goodness my mother was the black sheep of the family. So I began asking her questions and she explained, what apartheid was, that it was bad. And I began asking a lot of, questions of a lot of people around me. And my family was, very, very Afrikaans. And so um, I called them verkrampt, which means very, very uptight. So I had this dream of like, I have to fix the country. I don't know why I thought I could do that, but I have to fix everything because this shit's not right. And so my discovery of filmmaking, something happened before that. When I was living in the bush outside of Johannesburg, I went to boarding school, in the middle of nowhere. But like whenever I came home, I was mostly with my grandparents because my mother and father were traveling a lot. And I remember one day listening to some music and like it was drumming and it was Zulu music. It was, drumming and dancing and stuff like that. And I found these old tins and I was banging on them like I was playing the drums, like a little kid. And I was filled with this incredible feeling inside of me. And I called it love, but I just began weeping. And I thought to myself, if people felt this feeling, they wouldn't be mean to each other. They wouldn't treat black people badly. And I was obsessed with how do I get the whole country to hear this sound, this feeling that I'm having. And of course, I couldn't figure it out. But then, a few years later, when I went to see Star Wars in Lisbon, where I am now with my parents, and when I saw Star Wars, I was like, oh, this is how you do it. Movies, this is how you change people. This is how you. I didn't understand what empathy was, but this is how you get people to feel. And so then my journey was like, I need to become a filmmaker. This is how I'm going to change the world. But a lot of the drive was because shit was fucked up. And I went to university in Johannesburg, and I mean, every week the riot police were on campus, and like I had a friend once who was just dragged away, black kid, just dragged away, never saw him again. There's a story that in Johannesburg there was the police station. It was 10 floors. And the joke was, and it's a morbid joke, like once you go there, that's it, because everybody just supposedly just jumped off the 10th floor, committed suicide. And so you knew like once somebody went in there that was black, that was kind of it. They probably weren't coming out. So I was very motivated to try to get people to feel the injustice of what was going on. So that's sort of my origin story of my deep love for, making movies. I wanted people to feel things I was feeling. And what I was feeling was a deep sense of injustice, but also I was convinced that if people were more emotionally connected, they wouldn't be such assholes. Because I felt like I was surrounded by assholes in South Africa.
Wow. Fascinating. Again, every single conversation is fascinating when I
Yeah.
ask people about living in South Africa under apartheid. You must recognize how incredibly unique it is that you started having these thoughts at such a young age, because I have never
Yeah.
heard that from another white South African. They, one
Hmm.
man that I spoke to said that he went to Germany
Hmm.
and some guys were like scraping the frost off the plane before they took off or something. And he looked out the window and he saw that they were white.
Hmm.
And that kind of made him go, well, well, that's weird. Why are white guys scraping the plane? And he was a
Yeah.
teenager at this point. Like it was his first time traveling outside of South Africa. And so it just had never dawned on him. Like he never really thought about the fact that what he was living in was weird or different or strange or wrong. Of course, like,
Yeah.
he didn't even reach there. He just
Yeah.
didn't, he just, it was normal. And so many people had that same response to me.
I,
You're the first person to tell me at such a young age.
yeah, but I don't know that I came to it entirely on my own. I think part of it was my mom being such a rebel. But there's something else, I've never spoken about this publicly. I want to share this because it's really, it's fucked up, but it's really, I think when I was 4, the guy that used to handle, a different guy that used to handle the garden, he was like my grandfather's best friend. His name was Jack. And he was actually buried on the property when he died. But I used to go hang out across the road where all the servants lived, And there was this one little boy. We really got on super, super well. And this was not really common, It wasn't common for a white kid from the house to go, play with, all the black kids. But I do remember, and I'm very young. I remember we were going to build something. We're going to build like a fort, like little kids do. And I said to him, go grab the bricks and bring them here. And he turned around, and I remember this so keenly. And he said to me, I'm not your servant. And I was like, it just stopped me because I'm like, holy sh! I don't know what thoughts I was having, but it stunned me. And I think what happened is I snapped out of this thing of like, right, he's my friend. How did I? And it wasn't this well put together. This isn't well put together,
Hmm.
but as a kid, it wasn't this well put together. But I was really shocked at the suddenly being pulled out of a mind trap and realizing that's fucked up. And he was mad at me. He wouldn't
Yeah.
talk to me for a few days. And then I had to go and like, make amends and talk to him and apologize and a whole bunch of things. But in the act of trying to make it right, I was like, this is not right. So I think those two things really, really help. Plus, my grandfather was a deeply religious man. And even though he was, friends with this asshole prime minister, my grandfather was very respectful of everybody. And I think his religion gave him that, all beings are equal kind of thing. He was super respectful of everybody. And so I think I took on a lot of those things as well. But I don't think I was truly conscious of how bad things were until I went to university. And I went when I was 17. And that's when I got exposed to like how bad things really were and how many people were dying and what was going on. And so then I would spend a lot of time in the townships. Cape Town's funny. You spend time in Cape Town. If you leave the airport and you take the wrong turn, you go into the townships. And it's a whole different world, you know,
Mhm.
versus going the other direction where you go into like what I call affluent Cape Town.
Mhm.
And
We went
affluent
all
Cape Town
around, but yeah.
is amazing, but the amount of like land and property that just got destroyed, to make Cape Town this beautiful, beautiful city that it is now, it's very sad. I'm sure the earth feels it. I'm sure a lot of people still feel it. But having said all of that, I think South Africa, look, it has so much corruption, but the people are so incredible. And this post-apartheid experiment, as difficult as it's been, has been really, really amazing because people now speak so many languages. And there's so much understanding now that there wasn't before. And yes, of course, horrible things are still going on. But thank goodness, apartheid is pretty much dead. Not entirely, pretty much. And when I say pretty much dead, in both ways. It's
Yeah.
pretty much dead in generally in white people, but there is still like a lot of white people, farmers are getting killed still. And
Yeah.
my whole thing about that is like, okay, so like how many generations do you have to go back? I was talking to my friend Africa Brooke about this. Like, how many generations do you have to go back before you make it right? Like, do you kill the two generations before? Or do you kill 3 generations before? Or do you kill 10 generations before? Or do you kill 20
Mhm.
generations before? Like, how far do you go back to
Mhm.
make shit right? I'm not sure that's going to work. That's just
Mhm.
my 2 cents.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on so many things. I wanted to say too that that actually really surprised me from speaking to a lot of Black people, especially older Black people who had lived under apartheid, was where is your anger? Where is your need for revenge? Like
Mm,
I literally was like, oh my God, Hakuna Matata is true. Like
mm,
people really do feel that way in Africa. Like there was
mm,
this sense of like, that was horrible. I am so grateful that my children don't have to live under that. Let's go. Like it's
Yes.
about looking towards the future. You're right. Of
Yes.
course, there are atrocities. There's no doubt that there are many extremists. It can be very dangerous, especially as you mentioned, for white farmers. All of that exists. But it surprised me how open-hearted so many Black South Africans were with
Yeah.
willing to move forward and for progress for their country. They didn't want to harp on revenge in the
No.
past.
And something I've learned, so I lived in a before I left South Africa, I left in 93. Before I left, I was living in a small little place just outside, it was in Johannesburg, but it was called Yeovil. The law for the longest time was, black and white people can't live together, can't marry, all that bullshit. But Yeovil
Hmm.
was one of those places where we said like, fuck you, we don't give a shit. We're all living together. And it was an amazing experiment. It worked so well. Generally speaking, my sense of things back then, and I'm seeing it today as well in the world, generally speaking, people want to be good to each other.
Yeah.
It's the politicians and the media and the extremists that cause all the problems.
Yep.
Like generally speaking, in South Africa, even in apartheid, I mean, we used to go to into the townships and like, white kids and drink at the shebeens and get really, really fucked up drunk. And we just wanted to have a good time. We wanted to experience each other. Generally speaking, I think that's the truth of people. It's all the I don't know, media and all these weird extremist interests that cause all the problems. That's just how I experienced it.
No, totally agree. And I remember you saying in an interview before, and I don't know if I'm going to get the percentage right, but you were saying something like, I think it was 5% of people are psychopaths or something like
Yeah, I've
that, or
been
is
I've been
it?
corrected on that, but I mean, it seems like 1 in 25 may have no empathy. So let's say they're,
Ooh,
malignant narcissist, psychopath, sociopath. I mean, I've spoken to people like Dr. Ramani, and she said it's higher. You know,
oh
there's
no.
no good stats because it's not like these people are going in to these studies and saying,
Right.
"Hey, I'm a psychopath." They're not.
Yeah.
They're
And
they're
it's a
well hidden,
spectrum.
and it's a spectrum,
Hmm.
but it's pretty high. And the problem is, these people want to go into positions where they can exert power and control.
Exactly.
So in politics, they're way overrepresented compared to the regular population. CEOs. I mean, wherever there's power to be had over people, that's where they want to go. In religions,
Hmm.
I mean, I know this touches on your story, but in a lot of religions, I believe that some really malignant personalities go into religions to have power over people and play out their darkest shit. And the
No
people
doubt.
are attached to the goodness of the religion, so they think, well, this is just the way it is, or this is I deserve it, and so they're so abused because of these personalities.
Totally, totally agree. And cult leaders too, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's what brings us to the whole NXIVM situation, which is what brought I mean, we knew about you before, of course, because of your
yeah.
documentaries, but I started getting obsessed with watching cult documentaries specifically because I
Mm,
felt like it was really healing me. It was helping me to recognize that I was human and I could forgive myself, and that if all
yeah.
of these other people got fooled into it, then maybe I wasn't as stupid and I shouldn't be as angry at myself.
Yes.
It was good for me. So I was just like binging like crazy. And your HBO miniseries was one of those that I completely binge watched. If you guys haven't watched it yet, find it. It's called The Vow.
Mm,
There's way too many details for us to share here today, Mark, but I want you to give us a sense, like just a synopsis somehow. If you could give us a sense of how you got into this cult
mm.
and how you got out. Let's just go
Yeah.
with that so that we
I'll
so that
do it
we have
as
the
as
time.
yeah, I'll do it as fast as I can. But
There's so
basically,
much.
this
Yeah.
this drive that I had, to make movies to help the world, I created this film. I directed this film called What the Bleep Do We Know, which came out
Yeah.
in 2004. And it was my attempt to like unify, quantum mechanics and neurobiology and mysticism and a whole bunch of things together and self-esteem and it was my attempt to like say to the world, hey, there's all these possibilities that that we can actually have control over our life and blah blah blah. What happened from that film is it got a lot of attention,
A lot.
and
Yeah.
it was
You
a
should watch
very
that too,
strange.
guys.
Yeah, it's dated now, I will say, but it was a very strange film, but it got a lot of attention because it moved people very deeply. And I got approached by a lot of people saying, "Hey, we have an organization. We do all the things you talk about in the movie." And I was like, "Yeah, you guys are full of shit." And I got some weird invites. But then I got an invite. Somebody wrote me this letter. It was a really good letter, and they were inviting me to the symposium with all these scientists, and all the scientists I admired. And so I called this woman back. And long story short, I ended up meeting these two women in Beverly Hills, and they basically were pitching me on like, we really do know how to do what you're doing, and we have a mentor. He's the smartest man in the world, yada yada, highest IQ ever scored. And I was like, yeah, 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 yeah. But then they convinced me, and the way they convinced me is they said, we can help you make the movies you want to make. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So a few weeks later, that they said, we're going to come pick you up, and we're going to fly all over the country. We want you to introduce us to the scientists you know. I said, great. So they picked me up in a Learjet, not a rented Learjet, the Learjet they own. And of course, as a filmmaker, when you're struggling to make shit and somebody picks you up in a Learjet, you're like, well, that's interesting. And then they said, the next week was basically, we can help you make your movies, blah, 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 blah. And it was just this really
They were
delicious
grooming you.
seduction,
Yeah.
grooming me. And of course, I said, well, I'm really interested in that. I said, well, all you have to do is come meet our mentor and just come and experience some of our education. And I was like, all right, fine, because I was like, okay, so you're going to help me make my movies, and this is all you're asking. That's fine. So I went and I took their education, and I got to say, it was kind of mind blowing. I mean, I had some really massive perceptual shifts, and that's the thing I later understood. When you're in a cult or in an abusive relationship, they don't lead with the bad shit; they lead with the best shit. If you're in a relationship with a malignant narcissist, they lead with love bombing. If you're going into a cult, they lead with the best stuff, and everybody's amazing and they like you so much. But I just kept on feeling like they want to help me get my values out in the world. And so I studied and studied and studied, and the leader of the organization sort of became my mentor. What I didn't understand is like bit by bit, I was being hollowed out. I was being broken down. My whole foundation was being destroyed. And it's a long story. And if you watch The Vow, those of you who want to watch The Vow, you'll see that process. Because the episode one, we set up what the dream is of what got us all in, and the end of episode one, you go like, oh, something's not right, and then it just gets more and more fucked up, for the next 8 episodes, and that's just season one. But as the years went on, I realized something was off. Like the people were very unhappy, and I began to see the women themselves that were very close to the leader were getting more and more emotionally vacant and skinny, and they couldn't make decisions for themselves. And I was like, what is going on? And I kept on trying to figure out what was going on. And I would go to the leader and say, what is going on with these women? Why are they so unhappy? He goes, well, I'm working with them. I'm working with this one. I'm working with that one. I'm thinking to myself, it's really weird. And they're all whispering around each other. Later, what I realized it was like a harem of women that all hated each other, that all whispering about each other, that were vying for one man. I didn't understand that at the time because I'm still focused. I'm a Boy Scout basically at this point still. I'm like, I got to get my values out in the world. And what we finally uncover, my wife uncovers this first. What we finally uncover is that the leader has blackmailed all these women in this sort of secret society. So there's the educational component of the company, which is teaching ethics and morality and like helping people become better, businessmen and businesswomen, and like working on, some very deep psychological things that they believe stand in the way of your greatness. All of that sounds great. But underneath it was the secret society of a master slave system that he was at the top of, where basically women were going to other women, inviting them to a secret society. In order to get into the society, you had to give some collateral. Maybe it's a secret. Maybe it's naked pictures of yourself, naked videos of yourself, a confession. There was one confession somebody made of like, my father raped me, which wasn't true. But you gave the video confession and you gave this collateral to be allowed into the society. But like once these women were in, like you're screwed because you can't get out because they're going to release that. And then they just kept on asking for more and more. And eventually they're getting your bank information. It was quite, well, let me fast forward. I knew none of this, and eventually my wife brought to my attention something really, really dark is going on. But I'm still very attached to the ideology. I'm still very attached to the leader, and I'm like, this can't be possible. She's like, it is possible. It's creating a lot of stress in our marriage because they're trying to destroy her and trying to convince me she's this evil person. I'm sure those of you that have been in cults understand exactly what this is like. And eventually, my wife says to me, she said, what's it going to take for you to actually take in what I'm saying? I said, I need evidence. She goes, great. So she lines me up conversations with a number of these women, and they start telling me the stories of what's going on. And I'm like horrified. And I know that they're telling the truth. And so because I'm still under his spell, I go to him and I say, I'm very concerned about a whole bunch of things. I'm hearing about the society. I'm hearing about this, that, the other. I mean, I have this is a recorded conversation. And he says to me, well, I'm not sure what you mean. I know nothing about this. I mean, could you tell me the names of these women? And I said to him, like, if I tell you the names and this is true, you have their collateral. Oh, no, that sounds crazy. I go, okay, then I'm crazy. And he starts backpedaling and doing all this shit. And I realize in that moment that this guy that's been like my mentor now for almost 12 years just lied to me. And I'm like, holy shit. So my dearest friend in the world and my business partner, Sarah Edmondson, you know Sarah because you did a little bit culty, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
I'm saying to Sarah, something's wrong. And Sarah's being weird. She's like being
Mm.
very vague. And I'm like, I'm telling you something's wrong. There's a secret society of girls and women. There's all this blackmail stuff. It's super fucked up. And she finally, and this is recorded in the vow actually, she finally says, well, if it was true, then somebody couldn't talk about it. And I missed it the first time. And then she said it again. If it was true what you're saying, they probably couldn't talk about it. And it's like, oh shit. So we switch off the recording. It's such a pity because it was such an interesting conversation. And she tells me everything that all these women are branded, you know, on their pubic bone with his initials. There's all this collateral. They're sleep deprived. They're all like they're starving. I mean, holy shit. And so that
Gonna
was this
plug Sarah's
massive,
book for a minute
yes, Sarah's
for
book
to
Scarred,
con
which is her story.
yeah. So her
Yeah.
story of exactly what Mark's talking about right now. Yeah. Go ahead.
And I'm so horrified. And then I realized like, and she says to me as well, she says, I'm fucked. Like I'm fucked. Like I can't get out. I'm like, oh. And the rage builds in me. And I think, this is funny. You know what? This is the great thing about trauma. You've had childhood trauma. The injustice thing erupted inside of me.
Yeah.
And I was in such rage.
That
And
propels you.
collectively between, myself and my wife, and Sarah and Nippy and a few other people, we decided we have to get everybody out. We have to, and at first we weren't like, we're going to destroy their organization. That came later. That came once they started to, we started to hear rumors that they were trying to get us on white collar crimes and they were going to the FBI in Los Angeles. And we were like, you know what? Okay, fuck you. This is it. This is war. And so, we began to try to get everybody out. And all these women who were collateralized, who were messed up beyond belief, who were branded. I mean, there was a branding ceremony about to happen. And when I say branding, I'm just saying this for the audience. Understand, this is branding with a cauterizing knife with no anesthetic. You know, this is torture what they're doing. And I mean, we're like on the phone with girls that are going there, get out. I've got a taxi for you. Run to this address, run here. There's a taxi waiting. I mean, the shit that happened that's not even in the vow is extraordinary. And then thank goodness because they started to come after us because they had so much money at their disposal. I mean, they had like hundreds of millions of dollars available to them to sue us into death. And worse, they were trying to, get a Mexican judge to basically get us, what do you call it, extradited to Mexico. A whole bunch of crazy shit. And then thank goodness, I went to 3 FBI divisions. I went to 3 different countries. I spoke to probably 7 or 8 law enforcement individuals. Nobody would believe us. And then finally, we thought, screw it. We're going to the New York Times. We went to the New York Times, got the story published, and then the FBI in a different
On the
district
cover.
approached us and said, we'd like to talk to you. I was so angry at them. I was like, you motherfuckers wouldn't pay attention. And they said, listen, man, that wasn't our division. We're really sorry, but we're here now. And then what happened was one of the most extraordinary trials, honestly, so far in history against a cult. And, my former mentor now sits in prison for 120 years. He's served 3 so far. So he will be dying in prison.
Wow. And that's the quick synopsis. So
That's very
there's
fast.
there's so much more to that,
Yeah.
but even that alone is just like takes your breath away, fascinating, shocking.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
there's
fucked
so
up.
much there. It's yeah, so fucked up. I have to tell you though, I was really happy to hear you talk about Bonnie right now because when I was watching that documentary, I was thinking to myself, God, she really loves him.
Hmm.
She's just she that is pure, true, deep love
Yeah. Yeah.
because I in her position, I don't know if I would have been able to do that because
Hmm.
when somebody is indoctrinated, they are like a different person. They're like
They are.
abducted by aliens or something. I don't know how to, you
Yeah.
can't get to them. You can't reach
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
You can't get to them through logic, through evidence. I mean, it worked eventually, but usually they don't want to see it. They don't want to acknowledge it. They have excuses. They're doing mental gymnastics, da da da. But she
Hmm.
kept at it. She kept
Hmm.
at it until she got you to break out of this, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was really amazing to me because I
It's
don't know
amazing.
if I would have had the patience to do that.
And there's more to it, than is in the vow. By the way, we are celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary next week.
Amazing.
So it's
Oh,
it's it is a profound love. But yeah, she was very, very strategic. I mean, she was talking to an exit counselor, a cult exit counselor, as to how to deal with me. Not deal with
yeah.
me, but how to help me.
Yeah.
And she was
She
very
could have
smart. And
just
this is
left. She
she
could
could
have
have,
just
yeah,
went like, you know what? This guy's gone.
she
He's the
totally could
second
have.
in command. He's never going to listen
Yeah.
to me. I
Yeah.
gotta go. But she
No, she
didn't. She
but
just,
she was very
yeah.
smart. And so the what the counselor said to her is, don't attack the leader. That's very bad.
Ah,
It was interesting what the exit counselor said. She said, there's this there's a horizontal relationship that the person in the cult has and a vertical relationship. The horizontal relationship is their friends and family, but the vertical relationship with the leader trumps all of it.
yeah.
So you can't attack the leader. So what she had to do was show me things that were like it. So, she showed me the documentary Going Clear about Scientology. She showed me some interviews of different people about other organizations that weren't attacking my leader. And then I remember one day, there's a film called Holy Hell, which I highly recommend.
Yeah.
It's a buddy of mine, Will. He's a buddy of mine now. His name's Will Allen. He made this film about his cult, and he was a videographer in the cult. And I watched this documentary, and I was horrified because all the parallels were there. Like you were saying, watching The Vow,
Yeah.
all the parallels were there, and I was absolutely horrified. I'm like, oh my God. And everything started like clicking. And that's the thing I understand more and more now is you can't attack the religion, the ideology, the cult leader. You have to show the person examples of those things and get their buy-in that those things are a problem and
Mhm.
see if it'll connect. Here's the problem I had that was so difficult. I thought my values and the cult leader were synonymous.
Yeah.
So to attack him was to attack my values because I believed that he had the deepest understanding of anybody of what my actual values were, even better than me. It never occurred to me that I was projecting all my values on a psychopath because they're very, very good at mirroring shit
That's
back.
too hard to accept. You're the
Yes.
cognitive dissonance in your mind, like what you could never believe that. You know,
Yes.
that'd be way too hard for
Exactly.
your body to accept or your
Exactly.
mind.
So,
Yeah.
you're attached to the leader, but you're also attached to your values. And I think this is, by the way, these religions where there's a lot of pedophilia that goes on. I understand why people go, yeah, that's bad, but I still love my religion. My perspective is, no, your religion's fucking bad because it allows this shit. But they can't get there because they're still holding on to the religion as though that's their goodness because they don't know, well, I already have the goodness. That's how I'm able to project the goodness on the religion.
Yeah.
And so they stay trapped in a system that's doing really terrible things. I call
Mhm.
it like they have you by the balls. They have you by your values, you
Mhm.
know? And when you have somebody by their balls, their values, it's very hard for them because they think that their values are outside of them somehow, in the
Mhm.
religion, in the leader, and all they
And they
have to
think
do
that
is,
because that's what they're told.
and that's what they're told. Yeah, like you wouldn't have this life if it wasn't for us. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times people would say to me, you should be more grateful for Keith, the leader. I'm like, why? So, well, you wouldn't be who you are without him. And I'd be like, okay, I get that, but also my parents and my upbringing and a whole bunch of other things. So, like, what are we
And you
measuring
were
now?
already, Keith came to you because he was attracted to your goodness. Like, it's not like
Yeah,
you went looking for him because you were like this broken man looking for somebody to save you. So it wasn't
no,
like, yeah.
no. And I'm glad you said that because that's the other thing as well, is, the commonality, I think, for people that get stuck in these kinds of situations is their idealism. It's not that they're broken. I know everybody says, oh, they're broken. Yeah, okay. Everybody's broken in some way. Everybody's got some kind of like gaping hole of emptiness of some kind that they're looking for to, like, they use food to fill it, or they use sex or the TV or like whatever. Yes, everybody's got that. But it's the idealism, that it's the person that wants the better world, and somebody comes along and says, you know what, we can give you the better world. And when you feel that, and they offer you something that feels not only good but perhaps even logical, like their tech, the system they used to help free you up, there was some good shit in there.
Yeah.
There was some profound perceptual shifts I
And that's
had.
what attracted all the good people to them.
That's
Yeah.
what attracted all the good people. And they said, if you think this is great, wait to see what happens in the next training.
Mhm.
And they would say, this is how we're going to change the world, starting with the people. We're not using force to make people behave a certain way. We're starting with the people, integrating them more deeply with their own ethics and their own morality so they can be more full, more whole. Don't you think the world would be better if everybody was like that? And of course, the resounding answer is yes. You have to be a complete psychopath to go like, it's a scam. Most
Yeah.
people are like, yeah, that makes sense, because if you're not
Hmm.
if you're not being run by your fears and your angers and your rages, you don't do stupid things. Yeah, you don't. You care for people. So it all sounds very reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. It's like Scientology, they don't tell you about the Xenu and all that stuff until they really got you by the balls, you know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you find out the
Yes.
dark stuff later.
Yeah.
So is Keith who kind of inspired, for lack of a better word, is he the one who inspired you to start looking into this work with narcissism for your next project?
Yeah, actually, what happened is that just before my final sort of wake up, my wife Bonnie gave me an article to read because I had to call him like every day, and I started not calling him every day. And I said to her, I got to call him. And she goes, okay, well, before you speak to him, let me give you this article to read. And the article was about, I don't know, that 15, 12, or whatever signs of a narcissist. I think of a spiritual narcissist, maybe. And so I read the article. It was actually a really interesting article. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize this was narcissism. And then I called him. And during the phone call, in my mind, I started to tick off all the strategies he was doing. And when I hung the phone up, I was like, oh my God, he's the, he's the malignant narcissist. And she was like, yeah, worse than that. And so that was a real shock to me. And so I began studying narcissism and psychopathy. And understand, in the cult, we were studying psychopathy. We were studying these things. It never occurred to us that the person telling us to study it was it. It was almost like he was inoculating us. And so after the trial, this 2 years later, the trial, after the trial, well, 2.5 years later, I remember thinking about, well, what am I gonna do, with like, what am I gonna make next, kind of thing. Because we were in the middle of the vow, but like I wanted to make something that was more specific to the kind of pathology I was dealing with. And my wife said to me, why don't you make a film about narcissism? And I was like, that is a really good idea. And so I approached some people I knew who came on as producers, and the whole idea was we're gonna make a film to help people understand how it all works. And I think what's so unique about the film, by the way, we've been calling the film Empathy Not Included. I think it's changing names. I think it's going to become the Narcissist's Playbook. I think that will be actually be
Okay.
the name.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about the film, and we've been making it now, it's almost 3 years now. It's been a long haul. By the way, if anybody wants to make documentaries, don't. It's years of your life, years of your life. It's a hell of a journey. But the thing about it that was interesting, we've interviewed, victims of narcissism. We've interviewed, neuroscientists and clinicians and a whole bunch of things. But then the thing that's unique is we interview self-confessed narcissists, all the way from just, let's say malignant narcissism, the low end, all the way up to full psychopathy. That's been interesting because that's where you get to talk to people. And if they're really open with you, they tell you how they operate, how they think, what they feel or don't feel, and how some of them like hurting people. Now, the reason that was important is because, as you said, nobody wants to believe, not nobody, very few people really want to believe that this exists. It's too destabilizing. So I thought, well, let me just destabilize everybody. Let me go and talk to the people that admit it. That has been fascinating. And the other thing has been fascinating is that in the trial, my cult leader sat there for 6 weeks and showed no emotion, confessed to nothing. He did at the very end turn bright red, and I recognized, okay, that's he's enraged, but there was no admission of anything. In fact, he has this messianic delusion that he's still a unique human being and shouldn't be in prison. He, in fact, a couple of years ago, reached out to me via two other people to tell me to please tell the judge I made a mistake. This is the level of delusion of what we're dealing with. So I never got to have closure with him. But what I did get to do is I get to talk to other people who are like that and get closure by talking to them. And I've interviewed these people for days. That has been so fascinating. And so we're almost done now. We're in the final, weeks of editing, and I think we have something quite unique. And it is quite shocking and it is quite mind-blowing. But I think it'll give people insight into these people. And I'm almost reticent to say people. It is like another species we're dealing with. They don't have empathy. They don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about not giving a shit. It's a very, very different animal compared to most people, who are worried about, did I hurt that person? Why would you're not even a person to these people. You're like a toaster. That's fascinating.
It is so fascinating, and I can't wait to watch this documentary because I've been stuck in this sort of, empath, narcissist, haunted spiral quite a few
Yeah.
times in my life.
Yeah. Yes.
And I don't know how you can get caught up in it again, but you can, folks.
Yes.
Like, it's just crazy. And now I'm super hyper vigilant about any red flags, almost, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe
I think
maybe I've
it's
gone
the
off the deep end on the other side, but
well, maybe, but I think it's the caring. The beautiful thing is that we care, right? It's such a blessing and such a curse because I think we misidentify. And I think there's a kind of delusion where we think, well, I care, so everybody cares.
no,
No,
no.
you inside your little biological system, you care. You don't know if the other people care. Obviously, with evidence and time, the people in your life that love you and you love, you recognize that they do care because of the way they behave. But there's these people that we're projecting all our goodness on. They're not the same. And I mean, I think about it, I'm writing a little thing because I want to do a video on communal narcissism. Because communal narcissism is interesting. These are the people that run, charities and cults and religions, and they come across as super sweet. And there's always some virtue that they're selling. Maybe there's some charitable thing that they're selling. There's making the world better in some way. And they use that virtue to cover what they're really doing, which could be criminal. But really what they're trying to do is control everybody, to basically feed off them like a fucking vampire, feed off these people that are attached to this charitable thing or this whatever it is that they believe in. Those people it's tricky to see because they come across as really benevolent and really sweet and really kind until they're behind closed doors. Then they're complete assholes, you know?
You literally described somebody who was in my
Really?
life verbatim.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Actually,
pretty
I'm
creepy, gave
describing
me
some people
chills.
I'm dealing with right now. So that's, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so I was fascinated with these self-confessed narcissists, but self-aware narcissists, because I
yeah,
just couldn't believe that they knew what they were doing. I'm thinking, Was it some childhood trauma that they're just like unaware? Do they think that they're doing good and they just don't understand how hurtful it is? Like you just can't believe that anybody would be that cruel.
Yeah. And not a but and many of them feel like they're actually the victims. And because they're
Yeah.
the victims, they're allowed to do whatever they want. And the fact that you're complaining about it is that's what makes you a bad person.
Yep,
Because
that's
what
the
about them?
offense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this goes all the way back to my mom, right? Like in my,
Really.
I used to call my mom a persecuted princess. Just as a kid, I came up with that as a teenager. And it's because she
Mm.
had this combination of being a victim, but also being superior
Yes.
simultaneously. And
Yes.
I thought it was her. I thought she was like uniquely this weird combination of these two opposing things. But then I started to recognize it in other people. They had that same kind of, like you just described it, like how are you, like they're the victim, they're hurting you, they're the bullies, but then if you bring it up, you were the bad person.
Yes.
Like how could
Yes.
you? How could
Yeah.
you tell me that you were hurt by my actions?
Yes, it's extraordinary. And the problem is then with that exact pattern you're talking about is that the good people are like, oh my God, I hurt them
I'm
because
sorry. I
we're
won't bring
constantly
it up
worried
again.
about
I'll deal with
what can
it.
I
Yeah.
what can I do to fix this behavior?
Hmm.
They don't give a shit about their behavior. They want you to fix your behavior. And they
They want
lead
you
you
to
to
shut
believe
up
that
and
like
accept their behavior the way it is. Yeah.
exactly right. Exactly. It's extraordinary. It's so extraordinary the because people sometimes think narcissism is self-love. It's not self-love. It's a deep, deep self-hatred, but it's buried pretty deep, very deeply. They have egos that are so sensitive that they must have praise. At any point, if you call them out, it's a huge problem. And they go into, what's termed narcissistic rage, where they will rage at you because what happened is you destroyed for a brief moment the picture they have of
Image.
who they think they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. And
And
now
you
you're
revealed for a
describing my
split
ex.
second the truth,
Mhm.
and now they're going to destroy you.
Yeah. 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 That rage, like say no to them. Like when they tell you to do something, say, oh boy, that's
Oof.
when it happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you,
Yeah.
yeah, that's, yeah, that now you just described the man that I was forced to marry as a teenager, the terrorist.
I
That was that.
heard some of that story and I was thinking to myself, I wonder about the pathology there.
Yeah. Oh, there's probably multiple pathologies working simultaneously with that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you ever, I'm still to this day nervous about saying no because of the
Oh,
way he reacted. And you know
yes.
what? I got to be honest with you, Mark, and you're probably familiar with this too. That's just a common thing that women deal with. It's just at the bar or
Yeah.
walking in the streets or a coworker or whatever. He can
Yeah.
come on, they're so sweet, they're so nice, they're so kind, they're so this, that, and the other thing. And as soon as you say, no, I'm not interested, they just, on a
Yes.
dime, turn into
Yes.
somebody else.
I I'm happy not happy. I'm well, yes, I'm pleased you said that because I've been thinking a lot about I don't know what it's like to be a woman, But the fact that women have to constantly think about their safety versus me, I'm like, in American terms, like 6'2". I'm a strapping lad. Okay, I'm older now, but I'm still a little intimidating. Like I'm not afraid of a lot of people, but I keep on wondering what's it like to live in a body where there's a lot of people that can hurt you. That is a whole different experience. I don't think men generally know what that's like. I think about that a lot.
Yeah. And then add to that I suspect probably a lot of these narcissists that we're talking about, probably there's probably more men than women. Am I correct in that?
It shows up differently. Um,
Hmm.
I'm not sure. It might be 50-50, but it shows up very, very differently. I'm not
Hmm.
sure yet. I've spoken to a number of, psychologists, professors of psychology, and they've said it's kind of 50-50, but it just really, and it's funny because we do have in the film, we have a female narcissist.
Ah,
And it's really
yeah.
interesting because in the test screenings, people really hate hearing what she's saying, but she talks about how she manipulates men.
Oh,
And it's kind of scary because you're like, wait, I've seen that in this family member. I've seen that in that family member, you know?
yeah.
You hear in
It's more
psychological terms like
insidious.
it's much more
Mhm,
insidious because men are dopes when it comes to emotions.
mhm.
We can play like, I don't know, 10 notes of emotions and a woman can play, I don't know, maybe it's 100 notes of emotions. Now, what if somebody's toxic and they have that repertoire? It's pretty staggering, you know? But
Mhm.
again, it's very, very different. Men tend to be far more grandiose. Generally
Yeah.
speaking, they say that men are just more grandiose in terms of narcissism and women are generally more covert, you know? But I don't
So I
know
guess
what
that's
the
why
real stats are.
yeah, it probably feels like there's more of them because they are more, apparent. We can see
Yes,
them. Yeah,
yes,
they're more
yes,
aggressive, they're yeah. Whereas women will
yes,
do it in a more stealthy, insidious way. So
yes. That's
they're
my
not quite as
understanding.
visible. Yeah.
That's my understanding, yeah. But again, I don't know the exact numbers, but I've often tried to get the answer and sometimes the answer is just 50-50 and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Really?" You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, well, I've had both men and women in my life that have fit all of these, criteria. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised. But yeah, you're right. It is two very different things. And I think it's much more visible in men, like
Much more.
more quicker. Yeah, with
Much more.
women, and I think being another woman too, you have a lot of empathy and space and openness and forgiveness and trust to another woman. And so when she does turn out to be somebody who you weren't expecting, it's much more of a shock. Like you don't see, you're
Yes.
not willing to see it. Whereas with
Yes.
men, you're kind of always on guard anyway. There's always like a little
Yes.
bit of like, because you said, you know how it is. It's almost like predator prey, if we're gonna take it to some extreme example.
Yes.
That's how we live on this earth, right? So we're always kind of a little bit cautious, but we don't have that with other women. And so, or not as
Right.
much anyway, at least not for our physical safety. And so it is, yeah, it hurts
That
more
makes
though.
sense.
It really does. It hurts more when
Which
it's another woman.
oh, does it really? That's
Oh
interesting.
yeah. Well, it
Because
did
why is
for
it?
me
Because like
anyway.
we're supposed to be in the same team? Is that why?
Exactly. Yeah, because
Mm,
you reach out to other women and you have like this sisterhood solidarity and you support each other and it's like uh, so for them to turn out to be, these just insidious type
yeah.
cruel, evil, character, you just it throws you too because um I think especially with me it threw me really badly because I ignored the red flags for so long because I didn't want to see them and I just made excuses for her and I judged myself and you stay on that path a lot longer
I
I
see.
I think.
I see.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, maybe this is just my experience, but anyway, I'm super fascinated. Can't wait to watch
Yeah.
this documentary because I've got like, there's so much that I want to know. And I've been binging like all the podcasts and everything about narcissism, trying to
Yeah.
understand it. And I'm getting a lot of the message that they cannot be, they cannot be healed. They will never change. This is the way their brains are. And it's like, I don't know why I just feel like there has to be more to it. Like, no, that can't be it. Like this,
Yeah.
there needs to be, we're
You
all
are
redeemable.
you are going to
Like,
really, really, really love the film when you see it.
okay. Okay, great. I cannot wait.
Because we deal
Um,
with exactly what you're talking about.
okay, good. All right, awesome. So, it's going to be called the Narcissist Playbook. We will keep an eye out for it. I will be first in line. If you have a screening, please invite me. I will be
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I just like shamelessly invited myself. Thank you
Good.
so
No, I think
much.
that's great. I think it's great.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're going to open it up to questions and comments from people here. We're going to start with you, Melissa.
Hi, Yasmine. Hi, Mark. Mark, I'm the token South African in this podcast community. I'm
Nice.
from Cape Town, so I want to know what do you think about what's going on at the moment with Elon using Trump to take revenge on the country for not getting his way.
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on. I'll tell you why I say I don't know. When I was in South Africa in the 80s, I saw newspapers just flat out lie about shit.
Okay.
And then when I got to America, I thought, well, now I'm in a free country. That doesn't happen in America. But then I got into media a lot more in America and I realized, everybody's lying here as well. I don't know because there are too many different echo chambers. If I watch CNN, I have one version of reality. If I watch Fox, I have another version of reality. If I watch libertarian podcasts, I have another version of reality. So I don't know what the answer is. I see everybody hating each other, and I see everybody going like, well, that 50% plus of the country are Nazis. So now if that's true, what do we do? Do we drive them into the ocean? Now we're back to fucking apartheid now, if we're going to start doing that. What are we going to just replay apartheid now? Now we're going to use the media to like all the left people are libtard pedophiles and all the right people are Nazis. Well, that's fucking stupid, you know? So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And what I talk a lot about is I talk about the process of these things. Like I'm an old school liberal, you know? But I'm seeing all kinds of problems, you know, all everywhere. In fact, I think I'm a little more libertarian. So I don't know the answer. What do I think? I don't know. Is that really what's going on? Well, if I watch CNN, that's exactly what's going on. Like, for instance, do I think it's really, really evil that the United States government get audited? No, I don't. I think it's really good. But my tribe says you have to hate that. You have to hate. We have a list of things you're supposed to hate. You must hate Elon. You must hate Trump. You must hate everything they're doing. You must hate all those white Barbie women. And you must also hate the colored, black, and Indian people that are aligned with Trump as well. We're not racists, but we must hate them as well. That's just fucked up. Why can't we just look at things instead of just like my tribe has this preordained things that I'm supposed to love? Just look at, I think this thing is good whether my tribe likes it or not. I think that thing's bad whether my tribe likes it or not.
No, I
For
agree with
instance,
you on that part. I
mhm.
get that because that is something that I'm dealing with now where I agree with certain things certain groups say and then I agree with certain things other people say. So I don't know where I fit in anymore. I used to think I was liberal. I don't know where I fit in anymore.
Oh my God,
But
you are talking my language. That's my struggle too.
I'm a bit younger than you, so I was born in the 80s, so I don't have those memories of apartheid, but I am affected by it. So
Of
it is a
course.
very different perspective. It is a
Yes.
very different perspective. But also I live here now and I can tell you that now it is completely different.
Mm, mm. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I would probably tell you that my current best friend is a woman who is a white woman like in her 50s. And I'm
Yeah.
a colored woman in my late 30s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I
so
love that.
things have changed. Things have changed, but at the moment what and I hear what you say about the media as well. Like I used to love watching Al Jazeera and then watching BBC and then watching some of the local and then watching a bit of CNN because then you get the whole perspective and you
Right.
get to see the differences. You definitely get to see the differences. And also probably because of our education and when I was at school, we did learn a lot about propaganda and looking through all of those things and with the lens of apartheid and with the lens of
Nice.
different world wars. It was a big part of our history education.
Nice.
So
Nice.
I think like people in my generation have a higher media literacy than I would say. Like we don't. It's similar, but the fights that are happening in the US is not happening here.
Mm. Mm.
It's not quite the same. But there is the theory that Elon is not getting the contracts that he wants for the South African government. They're not giving
Yeah.
him they're not allowing his companies to come in, and that he's now
Yeah.
using influence with Trump to
You know, I think this is a perspective I have as well. I think if you look at anybody, if somebody looks to Elon, that Elon's going to save everything, I think that's a cock idea. And if you think the same of Trump, that's another cock idea. Everybody, all of these people are in it for themselves. It just so happens that maybe some of the things Elon's doing, I actually think maybe are not so bad. That doesn't mean I think that he's a good human being. I don't know. I've never met the guy. You know, just because somebody is doing something that aligns with your values, I think it's important not to go, "Ooh, this one now, he's the savior." No, he's not. He's Elon's being Elon, and again, I don't know. Trump's being Trump. You know, what Trump wants, I think, and I don't talk about this a lot. Trump wants to be remembered as the greatest president that ever lived. He wants to be admired by everybody. That is my belief. That is his biggest goal in life. Now, he might do some shit because of that, and he also might do some good things because of that, but that's what he wants. I don't look at a leader now and go like, oh, they love me, they think about me. No, they fucking don't think about me at all. None of these people think about me. And when I say me, I mean us. They just think about themselves. So, you know, it's a horrible situation where we vote people in that we think, well, maybe they'll do something that's good for us, but they don't think about us. And I think that's an important thing to remember is like, I've been talking to evolutionary biologists about what is this thing where we look at a leader and we sort of go like, oh my God, that's it. That's going to save everything. It's so built into our biology, right? That's why it's so difficult to try to figure out what's going on, because we're also contesting with our own biological feelings of like the you know, like back on the plains, you know, the strongest, most violent man was the one that was going to protect everybody. So maybe there's this built-in thing where you look at somebody who's a complete asshole and you think, well, he's going to protect us. So he's good. Nah, he's not good. He might protect you because you're his property, you know. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I think you know what I'm saying.
you know well, that's what happens in corporate. The strongest, loudest man gets promoted because he's the strong man.
Yes.
So we see it. But thank you for your time.
Great question. Thank you, Michelle. I loved your response to that and everything you had to say about Elon and Trump, because I 100% agree with that. I think that sometimes they are doing great things, like, you know, Trump signing the thing about like biological males and girls sports. The hero worship that happened around that was my problem.
Crazy,
I was like,
crazy,
now all of a
crazy.
sudden they're like, praise Trump, you know, and I'm like, oh, or if he comes forward and he says like Hamas are terrorists or something, you know, like he
Yeah.
just has to say the most basic things. And that's unfortunately part of the reason why that's happened is because we've left this gaping hole on the left. We've gone
Yes.
crazy. And so
Yes.
we let him do this. But I completely agree with you. It's whatever Trump does is in service of Trump, and I believe whatever Elon does is in service of Elon as well. Even if that means, yes, all the work he's doing with Doge and all that, that's great. That's fantastic. But he's not
Yeah.
doing it because he cares about you or me. He's doing it because it serves him. Everything,
Sure.
anything that either of these men do is because
Yes.
it serves them. And some of it
Yeah.
may be great, and this also might end in very bitter tears.
No, you're right. I mean, I wake up every morning thinking like, Jesus, what's in the news cycle from last night? And it's
Hmm.
insane, you know?
Hmm. I feel like two narcissists cannot coexist in the same sphere. So that's why I feel like there's going to be like some kind of like supernova explosion between the two of
Yeah.
these men. Who
I'm
knows?
not I'm not sure though, because I think they can for a while. You know, narcissists can work together. Also, like I think that from my understanding, Elon also has a whole lot of Asperger's as well. There's a whole cocktail of things going on. Um, but sometimes they can work together for a long time. You know, if they're aligned on what they want, they can actually work for a long time. But
Help each
yes,
other.
eventually they will tear each other apart eventually.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we've got a question here from somebody who does not want to ask it directly, so I'm going to ask it for her. She
Mm,
asks, what was your process for working through the shame of having blown past your red flags in the name of pushing your mission forward? Was there a
mm.
process of learning how to trust yourself again?
Such a good question. Such a good question. Yeah, there was a few things because I was very ashamed. In fact, my rage and my motivation was because of my shame and because under my watch, this had all happened, you know? And it wasn't like I was controlling everything, but like, how did I not know? Like, how did I not see? And people would say to me, "You're smart." And I'm going, "Well, maybe I'm not fucking smart. Maybe I'm stupid." And they were like, "No, no, no. You're not stupid." And I was like, "Okay, if I'm not stupid, then what?" And I was blinded by my need for utopia. I wanted utopia so badly. This is, by the way, where a lot of religions go wrong. I wanted utopia so badly that I was willing to not consciously but almost like unconsciously overlook certain things that didn't line up with it. So that was one thing. But at one point I had to ask myself a question. And this had to be a question that I had to ask myself alone without anybody's prompting. Was I trying to hurt people? And the resounding answer was no. I was always trying to help people. In fact, I remember the amount of times I would be coaching people and they'd say they wanted something and I say, "You should go do it." They go, "Yeah, but I have to be part of the organization." And I was like, "You don't have to be part of the organization. You can go do your dream." Like I want people to have their dreams. So what was so horrifying to me is because I wanted to help people to realize like I'd been part of a system that hurt people, that was very hard to swallow. But I had to reckon with what was my intent. It was to help people. It's all I was ever trying to do. And then something happened because I felt really stupid. And then 2020 rolled around and the entire world went insane. And I watched the level of propaganda, coercion, insanity, dropping of all common sense. And I was like, I just left a cult and I woke up inside a bigger one. And I saw how fucking headless everybody was, like headless fucking chickens attacking everybody. And I'm like, oh, it's not just me. It's kind of everybody. This is the human condition. That helped me so much because I went from being so ashamed to like, Jesus Christ, I'm watching it all play out in real time. I'm watching people lose their minds and attack each other because of like something in the news. And I watch the news cycle.
Yeah.
Every year it's a different, the banner around your Facebook picture. This year it's this thing. Next year it's that thing. Next year it's this thing. Like I'm noticing now, everybody's like, Ukraine's old news. Like, wait, but it's not Ukraine now. What are we doing now? Like there's always something you're told to do. And because I studied, and now more than before, because I've studied psychological operations so much, I could see massive psychological operations being perpetrated on the public by people that are very smart. There are people in the CIA, there are people in the NSA, there are people in clandestine services that know how to get you to believe something because they know how to destabilize you and break you enough that you're so desperate that you're untethered from your own reality. And then they give you something to hold on to tether you. And that thing they give you to hold on to tether you becomes your new reality. And you don't know how it happened. And it happened because it's in the manuals. It's in the interrogation manuals. I got hold of an interrogation manual when I was in South Africa from the South African police force. When I read that and I was like 21, I was horrified that they could do these things. And then when 2020 rolled around, I realized they're doing the same thing. They're destabilizing everybody. This whole thing of everybody being made to hate each other, you could argue and say it's just media trying to make money. And I'm like, okay, it could be that. But why is the whole algorithm designed that way as well? Why is it so important that everybody hate each other? Why is it so important that everyone's destabilized? Because when you're interrogating somebody, you need to break them down to the point that they're completely destabilized and they're untethered from themselves. Now you have this like free-floating ropes. Now you give them something to hold on to that feels stable. They will hold on to it. So that recognition made me go like, oh, I'm not so special. I'm not so special. I'm not the only one that fell for this shit. Everybody's falling for this shit. I go on social media and I look at the people that say this versus this and I go, oh, they're watching this kind of news. They're watching this kind of news. It's very predictable. and everybody's spewing news talking points. You know, you look at, like, let's take in America, for instance, the extreme right. Hollywood's all pedophiles. No, they're not all pedophiles. There are a bunch of them, not all, but they're just like, they're all pedophiles. They're all pedophiles. They're all pedophiles. They're all reptilians. They're all no, they're not all reptilians.
Yeah,
You know,
and
and I'm giving
every
you that
president
side.
is married
Yeah,
to a man,
yeah. It's not.
whether it's
It's
France or America.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
not. I don't think it's true because I spent a bunch of time in Hollywood, and yeah, I've seen some really horrible shit. But it's not this blanket thing, you know. But I know that they're saying that because they consume that kind of information. And that's what made me realize, oh yeah, I just consumed a certain kind of information and I was told not to look anywhere else. And
Hmm.
and my cult leader said, don't read that blog, don't read that book. And I was like, but it's information. They go, yeah, yeah. But to be honorable and to uphold the values of our mission, that's not a good thing to do. What kind of person reads hatred? Are you that kind of person that you read hatred? No, of course you're not that kind of person. So don't read hatred. Let's focus on the mission. That sounds fucking reasonable, but it's super fucked up. And that's what's going on a very, very big scale right now. I hope in my rant I answered some of the question.
Well, because I really want to know the answer to this question too, because I did the exact same thing as this person and as you. And if I'm understanding you correctly, it came from sort of forgiveness of understanding how hackable we are as human beings.
Yeah, and also it came from I had to really look at what was my intent,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because if I didn't ask that question, I would say there was a bad result and I was part of the bad result. Therefore, I must punish myself forever. I must pay penance forever, which is what the cult leader had us doing inside as well, paying penance for all the things we did wrong. And when I realized the truth of myself, the problem is I didn't know up to the trial when the investigations were happening. I was working with the FBI. I was filled with so much rage. I was like a soldier. I didn't have time to think until
Mhm.
the trial was done. And the FBI agent said to me, they said, when you walk off the stand, life will feel different. You've been at war. When you walk off the stand, the war is over for you. And I didn't really know what they meant, but that's what happened. It was over because they were pretty sure that he was going down. I wasn't so sure. And once we realized he was going down forever, there was all this space and everything I ignored in the battle came up. Self-hatred, disappointment, shame. I mean, I didn't want to show my face sometimes, you know, but here I was now, a public figure, and like feeling so ashamed. And it took a lot of digging in and figuring out like what am I about, you know? Like I threw everything out. I threw all religion out. I threw everything out. What am I about? What is my intent? What do I want? And I came up with, I think I really want to help still. I think that's what I'm about, you know? And that helped me tremendously.
Well, that's wonderful because I'm actually at the point now where I'm like, I don't even want to fucking help anybody anymore. I give up. You all suck. So
Been
maybe
there,
I'm in my healing phase right now,
been
but
there,
like yeah.
been there,
Um, so
been
we have
there.
another question from somebody else who doesn't want to ask it themselves, so I'll ask it for them. This is going to be a tough one, and we're short on time. We got a couple more questions to go. So if you don't want to answer it because it's so huge, just let me know. It
Yeah.
says, what would you recommend a parent do to get through to or to reconnect to an adult child who's become part of the trans ideology and has cut off contact? It's a very, it is very cult-like, and so evidence has not been effective.
There's a very simplistic answer I'm going to give also because of time, but also because it kind of in the end might be this simple. I think you have to constantly be an example of what true love is. And I
Mm.
say this in the same way I talk to people who have members in a cult. You have to be the foundation of true love. It's not that isn't punishing, not love with punishment, not love with judgment, like unconditional love. Because at some point they might compare what they're experiencing and compare it to what you're giving them. And if what you're giving them is true love, and true caring, and no matter what their choices are, you love them for the essence of who they are, that is available to them. And that's good.
Oh, that makes me so happy because I constantly have parents and friends and, siblings contacting me and telling me that somebody that they love has decided to convert to Islam and is becoming an extremist. What can we do? And I don't know. I'm not Dr. Stephen Hassan. I'm not like a cult expert, but I do give that advice where I say, do not lose contact, remain letting them know how much you love them, how much you care about them. And my thinking was at some point, these seeds that you're planting could germinate, and the cults that they're in is going to turn on them. They will see the dark spots. Eventually, the rot will show. And when
Yes.
that happens, they need to know that you're a safe space that they can go to. They need to know that there's somewhere that they can go. Because if they don't
Yes.
know that there's somewhere that they can go, then they will stay.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Right.
100%.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you validated I'm giving the right advice.
So good.
All
So
right.
good.
So, Sarah, you're next.
Thanks, Yasmin. Hi, Mark. So very quick explanation before I ask the question. I come from Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I'm one of the founding members of the United Against Gender Apartheid campaign. There are two campaigns currently trying to criminalize gender apartheid: United Against Gender Apartheid, which Yasmin is also a member of, and End Gender Apartheid. And we've been working on it for about almost a year now. And the first thing that they tell us is that apartheid has a very specific legal name and you can't change it. You can't do this. It's not possible. Don't even try. And I understand that this comes also from that side because they are scared. And we know that it's going to be a very long process because it's criminalizing it and legally changing and legally defining this concept. As somebody who survived cults and an apartheid, literally, can you tell us what you think about this? Is this even something that's possible for us? Should we even try, or should we just say, okay, this is what it is, and just give up?
Do you mean, should you use the word or should you push against the gender apartheid?
Both. Should we try to criminalize it? Should we just do the whole raising awareness thing? Should we even give up and not do that because it's not worth it, because it's not actually a valid concern? What do you think?
I don't know enough about it to speak about exactly what you're trying to do with promoting the problems with gender apartheid. But let me just talk for a second about the use of the word. Nobody owns that word. You know, the thing, let me tell you what the news does. The news keeps using a word and they use the word and they use the word and they use the word and suddenly everybody uses the word. So whatever. You use the words that most accurately describe it. If somebody is too stupid to understand that apartheid is a structure that can be applied to other things in the world, then they're just stupid. That's just what it is. If you want to use the word, you just keep using the word. And if people complain, you go, you know what? Whatever. Great. This is the word, this is the word, this is the word. But I don't know, because I know that there are so many potential complications when you're trying to criminalize something. I think the most important thing is if this is something that you feel strongly about, and like it feels like the kind of thing, like, because if I said to you, why don't you just stop? I'm not sure you'd be like, oh, okay, because it's burning in you probably. I don't think you can put the fire out. I think the fire goes out when it goes out. Maybe the fire goes out when you win, or the fire goes out when something transforms in you and also in the world. But it sounds like the fire's there. So that's my thought.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, the fire
Fire is good.
absolutely there.
I like
Yes.
fire.
Sarah has got it in droves.
I love it.
She is a fighter. I mean, I'm sure like Iranian women are just something
Yes.
superhuman, right?
Yes.
So yeah, she's got all the fire in her, just, to light us all up.
Yes.
So yeah.
And by the way, I do feel very strongly about what goes on there, the gender inequality and shit that goes on there. I have very strong opinions about any culture or religion that is demeaning women. I think it's criminal. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, so we are coming to time right now. And I just wanted to make sure that you got to say everything that you wanted to say, that there's nothing that remaining that you wanted to tell us about that I haven't asked you about, or maybe some words of advice that you wanted to share with us, or anything
No,
at
I
all.
don't
Wanted to give you
really.
the last
I mean,
word.
the only piece of advice I have, and this is something I talk about on my podcast. My podcast is called WTF is on my mind. You know, what the fuck is on my mind? What I'm constantly doing is I'm trying to apply what I've learned about cults and what I've learned about narcissism to multiple things in the world. Sometimes people say, well, narcissistic abuse only happens in romantic relationships. No, bullshit. It happens in jobs, it happens in
Yes.
religions, in cults, in charities, in political parties, in countries. It happens everywhere. And I think that if we can start to learn patterns of things, and then we can start to apply those patterns to everything else, that's what allows us to start to see, oh, that's full of shit. Why is that full of shit? Because there's coercion involved. I don't need to know the specifics of what's going on. That is force and coercion. There's a problem. And the way I know that is because if I study force and coercion and how it works and what consent is and what consent is not, then I look in the world and I can see where there's non-consensual things going on. So that's just, you know, that's my obsession is studying the pattern of things. And then in terms of, yeah, I talk about a lot of these. I mean, I go on and on and on. I'm full of piss and vinegar and fire and God knows what else myself. Not just Sarah. But yeah,
Wisdom and
I talk
love,
about these things on my
humanity.
podcast. And if you guys want to find me, just go to Instagram is where I'm most active. My website is markvicente.com. And then also, if you want to stay abreast of the film, go to the website www.empathynotIncluded.com. And there's a pop-up there you can get on the mailing list, and that's where there'll be updates about what's happening with the film. I'm very excited about what we're doing, and I can't wait for people to see it. But yeah, those are the sort of various places to hear me go on and yak more.
Mhm. It's so great that Bonnie was right on this again. She's such a
Yes,
wonderful, you're so lucky to have
I
found
am.
each other in this
I
universe.
am. I am.
Because how would she have known that in 3 years' time, narcissism is such a part of our vocabulary now. This is such a part of our pop psychology. Like everybody's talking about
Yeah.
narcissism, narcissists. Like it's a word that it's kind of been overused and therefore misunderstood. And so this is the
Yeah.
perfect time for this documentary to come out and just clarify things. You're hearing it now from the horse's mouth. You're hearing it straight from these self-confessed narcissists. So it's like, it's a beautiful way for us to finally cut through all of the noise and just hear, okay, what
Yes.
what is up with this? Let's talk about narcissism plainly, cleanly. I mean, I cannot wait. I will definitely be adding myself to that wait list. So
Nice.
excited that I got myself invited to the screening. And thank you so much, Mark, for absolutely everything. I don't know how I'm going to pull quotes out of this. Everything that you said was just like a beautiful little clip.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so
Thank you.
grateful to you.
And thank you for everything that you're doing as well, and to your audience who cares about these things. We need people to hear what we're saying. So I'm very appreciative of your audience as well.
Thank you. And thank you, my audience. All right. Thanks again, Mark. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so
Thank
much. I
you.
appreciate you. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Bye, Mark.
After hearing all that, you might be left wondering, what can I do? How can I help? Well, this is why I created a nonprofit called Free Hearts, Free Minds. We are the only organization dedicated exclusively to helping these free thinkers. We empower them with our programs and supportive community, lifting them up so they can heal, speak out, and begin to make positive changes, not just in their own lives, but within the broader community around them. If this is a cause that resonates with you and you want to make a difference, one way to do that is by donating to Free Hearts, Free Minds. Because not enough people care about this cause, we need people like you to help fuel this change. You can donate via our website, freeheartsfreeminds.com. Thank you. Every dollar you donate makes a difference.